Hi, guys, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Strategy Podcast. The Strategy Podcast is where we talk to leaders and entrepreneurs on what it takes to succeed and transform the business landscape in today's world. Today, I have a very special guest with us, and usually we're talking to entrepreneurs, understanding their challenges on growth, on ideation, on building a team. But I thought it's time that we think about the larger question on why we do businesses, because the whole idea is to create a collaborative economy at the end of it. We've been living with the capitalist system far too long, and I believe today is my opportunity to ask questions to a man who's on a mission to transform the human thought and evolve it to a level where they understand and differentiate between their needs and desires, and perhaps create a world which is more equanimous. So with that, I'd like to welcome Acharya Prashant. Acharya ji, thank you so much for being a part of the Strategy Podcast today. So the question that we are dealing with today is capitalism and spirituality. Is there a way we can find any synergy here? And I want to ask you a couple of questions on a wide-ranging topics, from how do we define success today to the westernization of the Indian mindset, and move towards how can business leadership transform themselves or evolve themselves. I would then like to move on to the role of education and close it with understanding your vision and the vision of the foundation in all of this. So my first question to you is on success. We've seen in the last 100 years post-industrial revolution that we've made as a society tremendous progress in economic well-being. At no time in our history has there been so much wealth, yet it is so unequally distributed. And people who have it, I only see misery on their faces. So what's wrong? Why are people who are wealthy not happy? What's the real cause of their misery?
No, it's not as if the people who do not have wealth are any happier. It's not that wealth is bringing about misery. Had wealth been bringing about misery, then it would have been pretty straightforward. Take the wealth away and the misery too would be gone. But it's not as simplistic as that. Having wealth does not take away the deeper miseries, as you said. Not having wealth probably has no impact on man's deeper miseries, but also does nothing to rid him of his very superficial bodily miseries. Probably we need to take wealth out of the whole equation. Yes, as you said, in the last couple of centuries, man has accumulated unprecedented wealth. You said its distribution has been pretty skewed, but that's the way it has been throughout history. If you look at human economic systems throughout the world, since we know the history of the economic orders, they have actually always been lopsided. There's no doubt about it. It's just that now there is so much that the skewness in the curve becomes unavoidable to see. It is so very apparent. It is right in our face. You can see it on the streets. But at a lower level, that's the way it always has been. It says that the magnitude of wealth has increased. Probably the shape of the distribution curve has not been very different at any point in the history of mankind. Think of a primarily agrarian order. Think of those who are collecting revenues from the farmers, the agriculturalists. And then think of the great ancient monuments. They are all built upon grain. Now, how do you feel about the distribution of wealth in those times at those places? We used to have a monarch who had the authority for absolute tyranny, and the money that was being collected from serfs. There was hardly any industry. 90% or more of the population was simply dependent on agriculture, and that's from where the entire revenue was being drawn, and it was going into very ambitious and very personal projects at times. So it was always lopsided. Probably we need to talk about the root of man's misery and the solution he deems in form of wealth. Less wealth, more wealth, nicely distributed wealth, badly distributed wealth. Are these very important questions, or is a more important question the very prominence of wealth in man's psyche as some kind of antidote to his deep and deepest miseries? Are we diagnosing our inner malaise correctly? Probably we need to go into that.
So a follow-up to this would be, do we lack the ingenuity, because we keep talking in the popular media about creating a more equanimous world where everybody has access to resources, and we are trying to do that, and everybody is trying to do that in their own given way. Is this a whole big farce? Because I know there are 10 odd people on the planet who own or control directly and indirectly almost every resource on this planet. So we are not walking the talk. What's wrong?
Right. But let's say you take away those resources from them, let's say, very hypothetically, and distribute it in a more even manner. Are you sure that would bring about a difference in the inner condition of most people? Okay, to keep it more factual, the people who control so much and so very disproportionate, are they any more joyful today than they were when they were not so wealthy? If they didn't gain in joyfulness post the accumulation of their wealth, how do you propose that the public at large would be any more joyful if it gets to partake in their wealth? The same wealth that could not benefit the ones who own it right now, how will it of be much use to the others? Let's take the whole hypothesis and turn it around.
That's true. So what's the key here? Is it, are we trying to fulfill our the gap that exists inside each one of us through material means, and it's not working out for them?
It's obvious. That's what we are doing.
Okay.
And given that human time frame is limited, it's kind of convenient to keep fooling oneself and keep partaking in a particular pursuit, endless pursuit, and challenging pursuit, and therefore entertaining pursuit of wealth and success and ambition, and convince oneself that one is leading a meaningful and productive and creative life, and you don't have much time to wake up, and that's such a blessing for most people. No, you can spend your 70 years doing any kind of
Right.
nonsense, and before the facts strike you, you are gone. So
It's
relief.
too late.
It's too late, and it's relief, no? Before the truth could be unveiled, you were no more there. So you have had in your own mind a successful life. Even till your last breath, you could remain convinced that the way you have lived was quite all right. So just this pursuit of wealth or ambition or success, the words that have come up, it's a good inner ploy against oneself. It's like conspirating against your own real interests.
So what's the cause of this conspiracy? Is it information being fed to me from society? Is it our education system?
We are
media?
asking for that. We are asking for that.
We are asking for that?
We are asking for that. You see,
Because for me to fundamentally rethink the core of who I am and challenge every thought and belief system means for me to have access to some new information.
correct. But tell me, what comes first in our cases? The urge to have that information or the information itself? Apparently, it is the information. You would say, I switch on the TV and there is so much being thrown at me, and all kinds of media, and the mobile phone, and you are being bombarded with all kinds of bits and bytes and data pieces that you may never have really bothered for had they not been thrown at you. Why do we open ourselves so easily to them? Why are we so welcoming? We'll have to go into that. That's why I said we ask for it.
Okay.
It's that inner void that you referred to that is actually asking for all these things. Otherwise, these things cannot stand on their own. They don't have any life energy of their own. We provide sustenance to them by indirectly, unconsciously asking for them. And we ask for them so that we don't have to ask for the real thing. So, I prefer to call it a conspiracy.
So my follow-up question to this is, on westernization of our thoughts and belief systems. This country with a legacy in trying to reframe or rethink fundamentally what it means to be human, and there are people who've walked the land before us who have tried in their own given way to explore that potential, and they came up with their own solutions. We have the Buddhas and the Mahavirs of this world who tried to do that in their own given way. Before that, we had the whole Brahmin movement in this country, where somebody said they have a direct conduit with the Almighty, and you come and follow them, and they give you a pathway towards that system. Now we see adoption of the Western mindset, which is more towards either a segment of it, largely the baby boomers, people in the 50s and the 60s who were very religious, hard-coded, and now we have this new generation, the millennials, who are all about atheism. The distance between all that is the material world, and I need to consume and exhume here. So in this change, I see our society and the youngsters today finding that very lucrative, because there is a distance between what happened in the past and today. So how do we bridge that gap, and is it okay to pursue that?
Do I hear you rightly? Are you talking about the fundamental change in position between how India supposedly has been in our myths, in our legends, and how you see the current crop today? Is that what you're
Yes.
referring to?
Yes.
Okay. You see, India has never been a monolith or a single stream. India has stood for inquiry. It has stood for a certain height. The one thing that has been common amongst all thinkers, philosophers, sects, cults, gurus, thoughts, has been that they all have tried to understand. They all have said that if man is there, then man deserves to live a fulfilling life. Man deserves to reach his utmost potential. In that, the thing called God, Ishvara, or even Brahm or Atma or Satya have sometimes had a place, not always. We have had orthodox systems, we had heterodox systems. The ones you named had no place for any Ishwar in their doctrines.
No.
And then there were those who knew nothing but Ishwar, and then there were those who refuted Ishwar as nothing but Maya and said only Brahm is the truth. So then what's common amongst all of them? If you're talking of, India and its legacy, right from the ancient times, what's common amongst all of them? They thought. They pondered, they meditated, they wanted to know. What they knew and how they expressed it has been very, very diverse, very diverse. But one thing is certain, whether you pick up a Mahavira, whether you pick up a Kashyap, whether you pick up Charvaks, or whether you pick up Upanishads, or whether you pick up Kabir Sahib, Mirabai, all belonging to very divergent streams of philosophy, you find a certain commitment towards truth. A commitment towards truth, which is nothing but a commitment towards one's own life. When you say that I want to know, it is not somebody outside of yourself that you are targeting. You are actually targeting your own life. You are saying, I want to live in a way that is not full of ignorance. I want to know. That's what they all have said. And their respective realizations, they all have expressed in different ways. Somebody would be singing, dancing. Somebody would be found meditating under a tree. Somebody would say this, somebody would say that. And all kinds of philosophies have been there. But do you see what has been common amongst them? They were not just prepared to lead a blind life. That's what India has stood for. Amid all the diversities and variances, India has stood for a commitment towards knowing. Sometimes the knowing has happened via the path of not knowing. So some of them have said the intellect is not needed. You can bypass the intellect and know in some other way. But ultimately, what is it that has been targeted? I am using the word very consciously, targeted. Ultimately, what is it that they have wanted? To know and to not live like a fool. And life by default fools everybody. One is as if born to be fooled. They have said, no, nothing doing. This won't do. We want to live a little more illumined life. Now come to this generation. Whatever they are saying, if ultimately it translates to, we want to know, albeit in our own way, I'm okay with it. Because that freedom has to be provided to everybody. You are born with certain characteristics, you are a body, there is the DNA. And then as you grow up, you are conditioned. So to each his own way. Everyone deserves the right to go about seeking the truth and seeking heights and seeking the realization of her own potential in her own personal way. That much is all right. Your way has to be personal because you are a person. Right. You stand at a certain point, so you'll have to find your way from there. But ultimately, the target has to be truth. Ultimately, the target has to be a certain high life. Ultimately, the target has to be living in a way that leaves you fulfilled and truly fulfilled, not some kind of self-deception. So, this current generation, I fully appreciate they are wary of the old symbols. But that's no problem. Symbols come and go. If they do not like the old names, the old forms, the old sounds, the old idols, let's just junk them. You don't need the old idols anymore. You can be a thorough iconoclast and yet you could be a worshipper of truth. But if what they are saying is that we do not need any height at all, we are satisfied leading a very, very mundane, carnal, animal existence, then there is a problem. I don't have a problem. They will have a problem. The problem is, there is something in man that will not agree to a carnal existence, merely carnal existence, merely carnal.
But for that to happen, you have to have the mind to question your actions.
You don't.
Right now, when I'm importing every thought, idea and belief system from the West, TikTok comes and I want to be on it and do all kinds of crazy things.
Why are you importing anything at all? Go into that.
Because I believe it gives me more
why do you believe that you want all those things, authority, etc.?
It gives me more power in the sense of...
who is the one who wants to be given anything? The one who feels he lacks something, correct? So at the center of the mind stands a sense of lack. Dissolve it or cleanse it, you purify it, elevate it, choose your word. It will remain unfulfilled, and the one who leads his life on such a hollow hypothesis, on such a hollow foundation, would be always found cringing. So there will be trouble. What I'm saying is, one is free to seek the utmost. Utmost not outside of oneself. Utmost possible to oneself. It's a very personal thing, right? If one is living, does one want to live in the gutter? To use that. Does one want to live in a gutter? No, one does do that. But then you have to be a lover of dignity at least. That's what I'm saying. So if that love is there, wonderful. If that love is not there, there would be widespread suffering.
Okay, I will move on to the next section, and this is on education. You've studied in some of the top institutions in this country, and I will talk about business right now because that is the context. In most of these schools, we're taught to be cutthroat when it comes to applying our mind and intellect to achieve outcomes in whichever industry or activity that we do. In this, we have succeeded. We've seen tremendous success. But what's happened is we've also exploited our nature and things which sustain us. How do you create, what's wrong with the education system first, that we have been so lopsided in our approach towards understanding growth, and what can we do to kind of outdo it or come out of this mindset?
Yeah, it's obvious. I mean, if we have been in this discussion for so long, it's quite obvious. You are telling somebody you need to have this knowledge without firstly engaging him in a discussion about why the fellow needs that knowledge at all. And why don't you want to engage him in that discussion? Because ultimately that discussion will lead to the question of his basic identity. You are being told, here is knowledge of sociology, here is knowledge of technology, here is knowledge of management principles. And the fellow is not interested in asking, but why do I need it? The ones who are delivering the knowledge are not interested, probably not even competent enough to address the question as to why that knowledge is needed at all. Because if you go into that question, you will have to ask who is the acquirer of that knowledge. What would that knowledge bring to him? Once you go into that question, then you realize to what extent is knowledge to be used, and more importantly, in what direction. Pretty nice, as long as you do not examine it very, very closely. If you will go and question the academicians, they will say certain things are taken for granted. If you are entering, for example, an MBA college, it is taken for granted that you are someone who knows the importance of management in corporate activity or even in personal life. They say it is understood that if you are coming to seek management education, then you know why management education is needed. I have great doubts there. Is it really understood?
No.
That's what.
So, a follow-up question: when you decided to pursue it, was it out of trying to kind of challenge that belief system in those institutions?
That was
or
not
it
a very explicit desire, but I found myself doing that when I was in campus. That's not what I entered the campus for. In fact, I was very reluctant to enter the campus. But once I entered the campus, that's what I found myself doing most of my 2 years.
The next question is on leadership. Again, it comes straight out of your MBA, where you're taught to go after a certain objective that you set for yourself, and then you have to get people together. It's very similar to any walk of life that we are trying to do. But in business, you're very cutthroat. So I use dominance and, trying to get people to toe the line, whether or not they are interested. This creates a lot of friction within organizations. I have worked for some of the largest management consulting firms in the world, and I've seen we've had attrition rates in our team as high as 50% and in a year, and that's terrible. So you're getting paid well, you're in a very nice ecosystem, but you're pathetically treated and feeling miserable all the time. So what's the role of leadership in embracing the change? Because what's happening is a lot of individuals and young people, they're moving towards the gig economy, which is my follow-up question. They do not want to work in these established organizations, in these established systems, and they're okay, living a life where financially they're always in doldrums, but at least it gives them the peace of mind of not being, not putting themselves through so much crap. So in this situation, how do you think old business leaders can evolve themselves, and how do you balance this problem?
I do not quite know what the gig economy is.
So the gig
but how will
economy
but how will you youngsters move towards the gig economy if the attrition rates remain low? So is the 50% attrition rate really a problem? It needs to be 70%, 80%, 200%. The fellow should go away, rejoin, and then again go away. You see, an attrition tells you that at least somebody has reached the breaking point, the saturation point, right? An instance of attrition, that's what it tells you. So there is 50% attrition that you call as lamentable. How about a place where there is just 3% attrition and people are staying put for all the wrong reasons? how do you know that organizations that have very low attrition rates are really great places for the people who are holed up there? How do you know?
But there's a ton of research which comes around manpower and the best places to work where they are evaluated on certain
And one of the
criteria.
important criteria is attrition.
Low attrition. The cause of low attrition is because those organizations allow individuals to flourish in some sense.
Correct. And who determines that they are flourishing? The individuals themselves.
Yes. And it
How
comes
do
from
they
the top.
know that they are really flourishing?
Because
if-
they're
if the-
challenging themselves every day, they're trying to be a better individual and grow their
Had they
area
known
of
so much,
opportunities.
had they really known so much, would they still be found in the places they usually are? Think of that. You see, if the business environment is really as cutthroat, as ambitious, as unscrupulous, and therefore as deceptive as you made it out to be, then won't a very shrewd business leader know how to project an apparition of inner flourish and make the employees believe that the place is very, very good for them? And don't you think that the business owner who is suffering a 50% attrition is actually more naive than evil? Do people really know what is good for them? I want to question that. Look at the state of the economy. Go into the personal lives of the people who are in those organizations that are called as the best places to be at, the best places to work in. Go into the lives of those people. Let's start with the basic thing. Let's measure their carbon footprint. You would probably agree that that's one of the clearest indicators of the expanse of one's consciousness these days. If you really are an intelligent or a wise individual, then your carbon footprint ought to be limited, maybe 50% of a peer group, in that range, right? So let's visit the employees of the top 10 best places to work in and look at their carbon footprints, for example. That will tell you how wise they really are. And is wisdom something fragmented? Is it possible that you are not wise in your personal life, but you will be very wise while taking your career decisions? Is that possible? No. So if they are stupid in their personal life, they'll be equally stupid in staying put at the places where they are working and praising. So of what use are these surveys?
Okay, a follow to that could be, we're living on a planet when just 100 years ago, the population was probably a sixth or a seventh. Now we are 7 times. In this changing scenario where there is a population outburst on the planet, just to feed so many mouths every day is a challenge. And I think thinking about carbon footprint would be the last thing on my mind, though I understand the relevance and importance of it, but I also understand the relevance and importance of the survival of the race.
Correct.
So how do I
And
kind of
you are
balance this
someone
out?
who is working in one of the world's best organizations. I suppose you are being paid quite well. And still, what occupies your mind is your concern for your bare survival. What does that tell about you? Being richly paid is still all that you are bothered about is your own survival. What kind of wisdom level does that indicate?
So it's actually about the larger population, wasn't about me.
I mean, of course, I'm not referring to you. I'm referring to that fellow who's working in one of those best places.
He's not even thinking about it.
That's what. So if the fellow is crap, then the place that holds him so dearly is equally crap or crappier.
Yes.
That's the truth of your best places to work in.
So how do you transform that? How do you change? How do we change our working places so we're more motivated to go in each day to create some more value for all of us.
It's not about the workplace really, it has to start with the individual. Spirituality does not deal with workplaces. It's a very trivial thing to talk of. A workplace is man's creation. If the man is all right, he would create something that would be beautiful and healthy. Right? So it's about the person, the human being. He needs to be addressed, and if he is all right, then he'll be able to take some really great decisions. A sequence of great decisions, day by day, minute by minute.
Okay. My second last question is on the economy. We are trying to adopt, again, a Western model. We started with a socialist system, we moved to a mixed economy. It yielded the Hindu growth rate of 3.5% for a long period of time, and until the late 80s, we did not have enough money to feed our population. After that, there was a population outburst in the country, and while China, who was roughly at the same stage as us, propelled into the second largest economy in the world and got so many people out of poverty, which is a landmark in itself, but we failed. Now we are looking at trying to play the catch-up game with them and looking at the American and Chinese economic models and adopt them. But what I see a core difference between them and us is both of those systems, they're very, from a population perspective, from the standpoint of diversity, they are not as diverse as us. China is more communist, it's driven by a party rule, and what they say, everybody has to toe the line, but that's not the case with India. With America, it's capitalism is part of their bread. Every day, that's what they're taught. One of the most famous TV channels in the US is Shark Tank, where they're telling people how to be great at businesses. Common people come there to present their business ideas. So there's that difference in mindset. And in our country, which is so diverse, which is a chaos in itself, can we adopt that straitjacket approach to economy to get so many people out of poverty and misery in this country?
Why do you really want to be someone who is already not happy being himself? Are China and US all right being what they have become?
Well, looks like they're gunning for more every day.
That's not the case. The average American needs to reduce his overall consumption levels to 1/16 of his present levels if his country and the planet is to be viable even in the short run. Do you want to really emulate him?
No.
That's over. Fine. Now, then the question is not in relation to China or US. Then the question is about what India needs to do on her own. Right?
Right.
So first of all, we don't need the levels of so-called prosperity that these nations have. We don't need that. We don't need the kind of per capita electricity consumption that they have. We don't even need to have 20% of that. It is not needed. What's the purpose of human life? Consume electricity? Is that what we are born for? Then why do you want to peg growth to electricity consumption? What kind of foolish correlation is this? I understand. You cannot have zero electricity and human bliss. That I appreciate. But why do you need to have gigatons of that thing? Do you really need that? Similarly, why do you need to have 1.8 cars per capita for you to feel happy? Why do you want to peg your happiness to that? And then, and think of this. You are 140 crore people, next year. US is still just 32 or 35. And those 32 and 35 are already a burden upon the planet. What if 140 more follow in the footsteps of those 32 or 35? Disaster is a small word. Similarly with China, do we really need to go the way they have gone? What is it that a human being Wants. Let's remember the basics always. Why do we forget them? What is it that we want? What is economics? 101. Economics is the art of human welfare, the art and science of human welfare. You want welfare. First of all, define welfare properly, won't you? Is welfare about getting more and more clothes on you? How many clothes can you wear? Of course, you do require clothes, but the question is, how much and how many? And will that really give you what you are so badly missing in your life? More and more clothes? Will that give you? So we need to see on our own. We have our own, as you said, ingenuity. The Indian genius is very independent, capable of observing in a very free way. We need to see how much do we really need. So, a particular level of material prosperity is definitely needed, but nothing more than that. No blind pursuit of material gains is needed, and I'm not talking of this like a monk. I'm talking of this like a thoroughbred economist, if you would.
But the unfortunate reality of our economic system is it's largely aping the West. In India, too, 75% of the resources
We are not even
controlled
aping
by
the West.
10%
We
of
are
the
aping
population.
our neighbors as well.
We are.
So
they
the
ape the
problem
West.
is not the West. The problem is the tendency to ape. Correct?
Right.
If your neighbor gets 2 cars, that's a bigger problem for you than the average American who might have 5 cars. Correct?
Right.
The average American is not so much of a trouble. Your neighbor is the trouble. So the tendency to ape is the problem. That needs to be addressed.
So my closing question, and I understand because the core answer to every question that I've asked you is a fundamental change in me, the person. So my ending question to you is, if you can tell me a little bit about your work and how can new entrepreneurs and seasoned business leaders really take a feather from your cap to take that step within. If you could like kind of give one closing thought on this.
This that we have just had is my work. Talking to people, publishing a lot, trying to reach out as much as I can. Even as we have been talking, there have been 12.5 people here. Wow, I love their faces. Look at how cleanly they are looking at us. Huh?
They look stunned.
Oh no, I mean, I love them so much. They're all my, you have a couple of IITians here. You have people from top-notch universities. Here we have people from Delhi University, GNU, and I don't know the educational credentials of everybody here. So we are not just talking. We are thinking, we are meditating, we want to know. We have this one life and we want to really make the most of it. You said capitalists are ambitious. We too are no less. We are probably more ambitious. We don't want to squander this life that we have. It's just that we don't think that the kind of success and money and ideals that the world is running after would bring to the world what the world really seeks. So,
Which is
this, this quality that you see on their faces right now. This is what one lives for. One lives to come to this point. And it's great if you can sustain this point. It's easy to come to this point and then slip back. We are working to not merely bring people to this point, but also have an ecosystem in which they can sustain it for long and longer durations, and then it becomes their life. That's what we are working for. And obviously beyond these dozen or so people, there are these cameras here that are taking the whole thing live to, I suppose, 1,000+ audience right now, and then the whole thing is anyway becoming more and more popular. So more people are looking at it, and I'm happier when a young person looks at these things, because that's where the opportunity to redeem lies. So that's the work. You could call it a revitalization of consciousness. You could call it having people know themselves well before they decide on anything. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Acharya. It was great talking to you. And I'm very happy to have you on the Strategy Podcast. Thank you so much.
All the best for your work.
Thank you so much.